Hooray, hooray. I am Vadim Open Yoga. This is our festival on the Black Sea. Our two yoga classes considered are reading aloud. Yoga is writing. This is, as it were, the third part of our presentation. And let's refresh our memory once again with such a very interesting thing as a completely new tool, I am. As an additional, very powerful tool for the development of the mind, for the development of concentration. Extremely powerful, how to say, working with my speech and with texts. Working with, how to say, with subtle movements of the hands when you write something down. This is directly related to the activity of the brain, as modern scientists tell us now, but in ancient times these were techniques. Absolutely good techniques. Let me remind you that when you read aloud, you struggle with internal dialogue, with internal thoughts, with some such parasitic phenomena. That's when you read to yourself. You can really substitute one word for another, or your thoughts can fly far, far away. And it's hard to focus on what you're reading, on the meaning there, on everything else. Therefore, such a rude, once again, this is quite a difficult exercise of reading aloud, very difficult. It will be easier for you, then, to practice Hatha Yoga of such an ascetic nature than this yoga of reading aloud. The related one, let me remind you, yoga is the yoga of writing. That is, together they make up a kind of joint instrument, when you can write and say out loud what you write. And this increases concentration even more. All of these methods were prescribed. In general, there is an interesting history of the spread of these methods, as much as we can imagine the way it was before. But on the other hand, I want to emphasize here that these are purely practical methods in everyday life, especially if you go into science. If you suddenly one of you decided to go into science, into serious physics, well, other natural science subjects. Although in general, strictly speaking, it is extremely desirable, or rather vital, whatever you do, to have a piece of paper, a pen, and preferably say out loud everything that you are studying. That is, they opened a textbook there by Landau, Lifshitz, some kind of quantum mechanics. And you start not just reading like a detective, but you start literally reading aloud and taking notes, and sometimes even rewriting. Not being shy, not being ashamed of the fact that you are not doing it to yourself. I can once again tell the story from my personal life, that once upon a time, a very long time ago, I entered MEFI. MEFI is a very serious university, at least it was then. Completely fool-free, completely ferocious, there were items there, and they were required. And the very first thing, in particular, that we were told that, guys, reading a textbook while lying on the couch like a detective is a waste of time. You just won't pass the exams, you'll be out, you won't understand the subject. To study, I remember we were trained like this, because, you know, people come to MEFI, well, many like me. And there is absolutely no small town there, and, well, you know, there are no such skills yet. And then it seems, well, since we are so great, since we are in MEFI, we must therefore read half a page from half a glance. We're great, aren't we? Well, indeed. Many people came there from physics and mathematics schools, and so on, and so on. And there's no, stop guys, stop. Such cases do not take place here. You'll be out. I remember, God willing. So, good health, all the best. Good luck to all our teachers, mentors, curators. They demanded from us. For that, here is a bow to the ground for what was demanded. I remember the curator of our group gathered us. This is the story. There was a group of 20-25 people somewhere. I don't remember how many now. He says, well, guys, in general, experience shows that only half of you will finish your studies. We gave up like that, looked at each other. Well, the reality turned out to be really more severe. 1/3 of them graduated. And not because they were even so ruthlessly kicked out. No, they're at least from the 10th time you could retake and continue to study, because everyone understood that it was hard to study. Learning must be hard. But simply because the people understood that it was not theirs. You know, always what is called dharma is not their way of life. So, this skill, yes. Even if among scientists it is considered immoral to do something with a piece of paper and a pen. Of course, a person who has never trained his mind looks absolutely ridiculous and thinks that if he sprawls in a chair there now, he will get some thick textbook on mathematical analysis there or on physics or some other exact subjects. Or, for that matter, on some difficult section of yoga, like yoga dancing, the Eightfold Path. That here he is now, like this, I will lie, leaf through, read, and now I will become the greatest of the great. Nothing like that. The mind begins to slide. You begin to substitute one word for another, one association for another. As a rule, we substitute. Now we have something spinning in our head, and we are not so much reading as trying to see what we once saw or knew before. That is, any pre-established knowledge that revolves in us, it is, well, critical for our karma. We begin to perceive the entire universe based on those impressions that were before, from those knowledge, from those semantic loads that were before. And this terrible thing actually determines our fate. We just can't see. We have blind spots formed and automatically filled with what was before. It means that it can be extremely difficult to deal with this. Well, a leaf, a piece of paper, a pen comes to the rescue. This is this technique, when you retire and start working on whatever it is. Sometimes I had to work through lectures in this way, and then the result is good. The degree of concentration, well, that is. Then at least there is some result. If this is not the case, if everyone considers it, well, as if it is above their dignity to take notes or write something. Especially in the modern era, let me remind you, everyone has mobile phones. They say, and now I'm going to record this lecture on my mobile phone, and then I'll come home and listen to it again. Yes, at least 1,000 times listen to the presentation of some section of the field theory really there. It will simply slip away. That is, you need to sit down, concentrate, disconnect, and reproduce yourself. Therefore, this thing here in terms of reading yoga and writing yoga, here it is each separately, and even when it works together, extremely powerfully.
Она каждая по отдельности, а еще когда вместе, работает чрезвычайно мощно.
All of this, I remind you, resulted in different, well, indirect methods. A few more questions about the inscription. Yes, yoga reading, my favorite example. I'm going to write 3 words now. I'll write 3 words, and you. It will be seen there, gaze. Now I'm going to write 3 words and take a look at them. So, what did we have there? Third, yoga. And so it is. Yes. Look at these three words. Well, for those who may be there, who do not have. I wrote the word yoga in three different ways. The first layer, and O-G-A. The second way is E with two dots, G-A. The third way, and, then again E, then G-A. And in fact, when we say yoga, yoga, it doesn't feel like any combination of sounds. But if you take a look, something familiar, native, understandable, something unfamiliar, harmful and terrible, will immediately catch your eye. Yes. And this is also such a powerful component of the practice when we perceive writing as what is called yantra. There is a certain section in yoga called yantra yoga. Here is this topic: what if you do this or that practice? Well, India, she loves all sorts of religious comparisons, religious analogies there. That if you do this or that practice without yantra, the gods will be dissatisfied with you there. There, you know, for a long time you can declare that you will not have a concentration of mind, that perception will begin to wander. Well, try, yes, here inform ordinary people. They won't even understand the full extent, therefore, of their fall, of all the horror of what is happening. And that's why, you know, they come up with quite such biting, but lucid moments like this. Everyone, the gods will be displeased, you're all over. Yes, so this is really this factor, when you write by hand, and what you write turns into some kind of living image in itself. Extremely strongly allows, well, to strengthen the concentration and perception of the text. Moreover, you know, literacy problems are connected with this. Let's say, here in Russian. Well, they artificially dragged, let's say, a writing system, and there may be a huge number of discrepancies in the spelling. And there are languages, like Arabic, Sanskrit, and so on, where, let's say, well, Sanskrit is a syllabic letter, and in some cases there are fewer discrepancies, fewer errors, that is, it is perceived more and more adequately purely visually, yes. A separate big topic.